Well, she can forget about that raise we were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's funny.
So I got one.
There you go.
So you good?
Yep.
Okay, we'll call to order the May 13th meeting of the Landmarks Commission. We'll start with the roll. Susan? Veronica?
Here.
Justin?
Yes.
Ron? Ian?
Yes.
And David?
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum. First item on the agenda is item B, approval of the agenda for the May 13th, 2019 meeting of the Landmarks Commission. Just as a note, this agenda was amended from what was originally posted. Any comments, questions, changes to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right.
Motion carries. Next item is item C, approval of the minutes from the April 25th, 2019 meeting of the Landmarks Commission. The minutes were in your packet. Anybody have any comments, changes, revisions to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D, regular business, certificate of appropriateness 19-09, consideration with possible action on a design review for a new garage and driveway at 926 South Quincy Street. Jason?
There it is, South Quincy Street. Here's the proposed new garage. Some sketches showing where the proposed new garage will go. It's in way of the older, possibly historic, but certainly not original garage. Slightly larger, but not much larger. And recommend approval of the proposed demolition of the current garage. Recommend approval of the construction of the new garage. Recommend approval of the proposed changes to the driveway and sidewalk arrangements. And just as an aside, the windows are kind of fancy. It'd be a shame to see them in a dumpster. Beyond that, I have no.
Any discussion?
Can you walk through the placement of the garage on the site?
So on the left, you have a site map. And at the top right,
Yeah.
which I guess would be what, the northwest, that's where the current garage is. As constructed, the house had a larger, taller carriage house at that site, but the Sanborn maps from 1936 show a much smaller, shorter garage, which is presumably the one that's there currently. So the current garage is not original, but may be somewhat historic in its own right. I say that with an intentional question mark in my voice. There's an addition, a shed addition to the garage at the north end of the garage. So the request is to demolish the current garage and attached shed, construct a new garage of similar overall form and dimensions on the site of the current garage, and to rework the driveway approach so that the entrance to the garage is not from the east, but rather is from the south. So the portion of the driveway that you would see from the street remains as it was, but instead of branching off and cutting through the backyard, which is kind of a dashed line swoop, you would have a straighter approach to a garage driveway pad, and then into the garage from the south instead of from the east. The current garage is vinyl sided. The National Register nomination paperwork generally does not make any reference to detached garages, so it's difficult to make an argument that this garage, which is not really visible from the right-of-way, is an important part in defining the historic character or integrity of the property. The new garage is respectful to the size and style of the house, and also to the garage that they're proposing to raise. So, based on that, there's no objections that I can find within the Secretary of the Interior standards to this. And on that alone, I would recommend approval of these proposed plans.
There's no photographs in that packet of the existing garage, right?
Yeah.
There
There
are,
are.
and some cracks in water.
I don't have photos of the slideshow, but they're in the packet.
One, you couldn't tell where the garage started and the pond ended, or whatever.
Okay.
And so at the bottom of this view is the east perspective. So it would basically compare favorably with the front of the garage as it is now. Those two windows on the left side with that gable end, that's where the current garage door is.
Okay.
I think it's compelling what you said about how this is respectful to the house itself, particularly given that this is not original to, was it 1901?
Correct. In 1901, there was presumably a side gabled 1.5-story carriage shed, some sort of accessory structure. At some point, that was given its own street address as a 90 whatever it is and a half, or 912, I forget the address, I'm sorry. But it had a half number on it, so I don't know if that was implying that it had been converted to a place of business or a mother-in-law type structure or just rental. The current building is not 1.5 stories, it's shorter, which leads me to speculate that the current garage is not the original building. It may be old and somewhat historic, but it's not a make or break for the integrity of the property or the district, or even really visible from a public right of way unless you're really looking for it.
Any other discussion? Questions?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a second.
Further discussion? Susan, did you get logged in?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm getting good at it, so.
That was approved unanimously.
First try, right?
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
It's my 5th time, now I know.
Next item on the agenda is item E, informational. E1 is an informational review for window replacement, roof restructuring, and an addition at 1014 South Jackson Street. Certificate of appropriateness 19-11.
I assume this is for you all?
Yes.
If you want to just come sit at the table, we're just going to have a discussion about it. If I could just get all of your names for the public record.
Sure.
Go ahead and start.
Sue Lalizer,
Bill Lalizer. Ryan Kraft.
Rod Galunga.
So I don't know if you want to just go through some of the things that we put together, give everyone a brief discussion about what the project is. This was an action item originally. We moved it to informational because we were going to recommend denial of the application. So they wanted to come in and have a discussion with you all to see what parts of their concepts you like, which parts you would not be supportive of, and then just go back and forth between what we think is best for the house and what they're willing to do with it, basically. Go.
You want me to go? All right, here we are on the map, South Jackson near Eliza Street. Built in 1936, it's a contributing property within the district. I suppose technically it's a colonial revival stone building with stone parapet. Also notice the stone dentils and keystones above the windows, hidden in the stone arrangement there. The dentils, keystones, and the parapet would be considered key characteristics for this particular house. Within your packet, you've got some Delier's proposed drawings. Here I've tried to put them side by side just for convenience sake. So on the left, we have a drawing of what the house currently is, give or take. I've drawn some sight lines just to show that I'm trying to line everything up, the ground with the ground, the top of the chimney with the top of the chimney. In the proposed arrangement, the roof itself, I suppose, maintains its shape but grows. It gets bigger, so its overall height is larger, and in the proposed arrangement, the roof then extends out beyond where the parapet is to what you have there. Right? Picture's worth more than what I can tell you. From the north elevation, here again, it is versus what's proposed. You see the removal of the parapet, the reuse of that stone to construct an addition on the rear of the house, and the larger hipped roof form, both taller and hipping out over the back of the house. Another view, the back of the house, this is the view hidden from the street, is on the left side. You see stone that will be reused to build the addition. Also, on the two-story bay, it's proposed to re-side that to remove the current wood siding and put on new wood siding. And based on what I understand from the drawings, that what appears to be a gable end roof over the garage isn't really a roof over the garage, but rather up against the wall of the house, perhaps in anticipation of a future larger garage. All right, so that's what's going on there. Yeah. Without the isometric view, it was kind of a, oh, wait a minute, I understand. So, the fourth view is on the left. You see the stone parapet near the top, the garage. In the proposed arrangement, the much larger hipped roof replacing the stone parapet, the rear addition on the second story, and that gable end that will perhaps someday project over a different garage. Beyond the main visible changes, it's also been proposed to swap out the windows. I don't know if the windows that are currently there are original or not. It's also been proposed to replace rotting lintels. There are metal lintels above the windows. Some of them show signs of rust. I don't know that they require replacement or just some cleaning and repainting, but these are just general questions that I had. I don't know what the next slide holds, so let me check. Oh, Secretary of the Interior Standards. Right, so if we want to get into that, I note that the Secretary of the Interior Standards say that you shouldn't be removing distinctive materials or altering features that characterize a property. I note that when you make an addition, these changes shouldn't create a false sense of historical development. Distinctive features will be preserved. Deteriorated stuff should be repaired rather than replaced. And the numbering isn't me being unable to count from 1 to 4. These are number 2, number 3, number 5, number 6 within the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. To continue, they have guidelines for masonry, recommending that you identify, retain, and preserve features that are important in defining the overall historic character of the building, such as walls, brackets, railings, cornices, blah, blah, blah. Not recommended, altering features which are important in defining the overall historic character of the building. Also, guidelines for roofs, recommended, identifying, retaining, or preserving the roof that defines the overall historic character of the building. The form of the roof is significant, as are its decorative and functional features such as parapets and size. Not recommended, altering the roof and roofing materials, which are important to the overall historic character of the building, so the character is diminished.
Can you
Can you go back one? Yeah, so it says the same thing, not recommended. It says, as a result, that the character is diminished. So I think that's stretching it a little bit, but I don't think we're diminishing the character of the home.
Changing it, anyway. Diminishing is certainly good.
Right. Well,
Eye of the
preserve,
beholder, I guess,
I
right?
like to think preserving it is a better word. So, not preserving the character, but preserving the home. So, just because of the problems that we've had when we've
So that's,
been
that
there.
would be the first question
Yeah,
I would
so,
have, is
'cause we've been-
what are the problems with the parapet in particular?
Well, my wife and I have been there for 20 years now, so we've had that roof replaced. So the way that parapet sits is, you have the parapet, obviously the hip roof sits inside the parapet wall, right? So the parapet wall is basically been rubber roofed over the top, and then comes down, and then comes up underneath the shingles, okay? So, we had problems with leaking when we replaced it. 8 years ago or so, we're having problems with leaking again. So those rubber roofs are just not fun to deal with, particularly the corners, the scuppers. There's traditional scuppers running out the sides when you try to seal all that. So you go into our master bedroom and that ceiling's been patched. You go into the other bedroom and that ceiling has been patched. We had a leak starting in the closet of the other bedroom this year, and in the hallway.
Holds a lot of water up there.
Yeah, so the parapet walls, the top caps are tipped in, okay, which leads us to question whether or not structurally we're going to have some issues, and we won't know that until we get into it. But we had leaking in the kitchen. Well, whenever we did the kitchen, prior to doing the
Yeah.
kitchen, which was 2015 or something
Yeah.
like that. But if you look, if you can go to a view here, go ahead to, or back a view, can't remember which way you were going, go forward, the drawings, excuse me. Okay, so if you look at the existing on the left, you see the garage, and then you see another flat roof up on top of there, okay? That's above the kitchen, okay? So we had issues with water coming in that kitchen, through the kitchen ceiling, and we had the roofer over trying to figure out, exactly what was happening during that time period. What we think finally got it, because he did some more caulking on the edge of that rubber roof, okay? Because now you're taking a rubber roof and you're trying to match it up against a stone, right? So, and you have kind of this ledge there. So he did some caulking there, but on that parapet wall, with those blocks tipping forward, that exposed a big gap underneath the block as well, and he went in and put a large, some really good caulk in there underneath that top cap. Between those two things, that took care of it, but again, how long is that gonna last?
Is that unusual for a hip roof to be inside a parapet?
If I can answer that, yes. In this particular case, I looked through the Wisconsin Architecture and History Inventory Database, and I think I only saw 2 other houses that are colonial revival with a parapet and largely hidden hipped roof. So in that sense, it's somewhat unique within the state, or more unique than not, I suppose.
Certainly, there are plenty of flat parapet roofs that don't have the leakage problems you're talking about. So is this an issue of having the hip roof inside the parapet? Is that what you think it is?
Yeah, at one point in time in the front, there was actually a drain that also caught the roof runoff. So in the very front, right up above, that middle window is the bathroom. So, and there was actually going to the storm sewer, which of course is, you can't do anymore, right? But that was actually a combination of vent and a drain. And it was down, kind of recessed inside, you know, you have the hip roof that goes inside the parapet, and then there's probably about, I don't know, what is it, 18 inches flat, that's all the way around there, and that drain was in that flat part, and it was sunken down in there, and so the water could run in there, and then it had like a screen there to keep the big stuff out, okay? But that, when that would back up, then it would rush up underneath the rubber roofing. When we redid the bathroom upstairs, because we redid the master bath, when we redid that, they actually had to repair part of that wall because of the water damage that had been done in
Would you
there.
describe this as a fundamental design flaw?
Oh, I would. I mean, we replaced all the rubber roofing and the shingles once already, you know.
How long ago?
We did that about 8 years ago. You know, again, the dental work would stay. We actually took ideas from the neighborhood because there are other homes, maybe not exact with the stone design, but there are other stone homes around that have, you know, the traditional overhang.
The hard part with the hip roof inside of this parapet is it's a large unheated attic space, and there is really no ventilation that's coming in from the eave. So our overall design, when we talked about introducing the overhangs, is we're going to leave the dental mold, which is a large character of the house. At the top of that dental mold is where we were carrying off with our soffit line and the new roof system. So what pictures don't show is the inside of that attic. The roof boards, the rafters are just black. They haven't been breathing correctly for years. You can see in this photo the dental mold detail around there, and all the way down to the window tops where that masonry is a little bit discolored. That has been leaking for years. We haven't been able to open up a wall to see what kind of condition the wood is in. But those steel lintels on there, where you can see the rust in these pictures, there's some on the back of the house are just about gone. It is not scaling rust, they are just about completely worn through the full quarter.
Would you agree this is a fundamentally flawed design?
Yes. Like you had said, there's parapet roofs with flat roof structures with internal drains that work. They're all right. But the combination of the hip roof and that parapet, the drainage design inside of that roof around that parapet is pretty poor.
So why not just get rid of the hip roof altogether? Why are we replacing it at all?
Ultimately, I think because there's a large concern of that stone taking on water. I mean, the stone is porous, so the stone can actually absorb the water. We think that water is getting in through that stone on top of that whole dental mold detail. You can see it sticks up probably about 5 inches. Water is actually seeping in and around that and attacking those lintels.
But on the inside of the parapet, doesn't the rubber run up the backside of the stone?
It runs up the backside of the stone, yes. It actually covers over the top of it. But the dental mold itself, the top of that stone, there's no flashings there. There's no rubber protecting that. It's just stone.
So here is here's a photo of a close-up of one of the lintels. It isn't I actually, when my wife and I first bought the house, and I was a little bit more energetic, so I actually took and scraped all of those and primed them with appropriate primer for the metal, and caulked them and things like that, and I've since had them, touched up again, but they're, like Rod said, they're deteriorating. It isn't surface rust, and if you look at that, you can see down the window, the rust is running, right? The rust is running down the window. So the combinations that I put on when I did this at the time, this was when we first moved in, I replaced the wood screens and storms because they were in very rough shape with the aluminum combinations, and those combinations that I have put on are there's on many of them there's just rust, and it doesn't wipe off or anything like that. It's there. I mean, even rust on some of the windows.
So the hip roof design ultimately is to give us a soffit on the house and allow us to get true attic ventilation, where we're going to get that attic flow coming from the eave up through the ridge vent.
But if you got rid of the hip roof altogether, you don't have a ventilation problem.
There's nothing to vent.
There's
nothing to
no,
vent.
there's nothing to vent, right?
Yeah, if you
That's
have a
if
flat
there's a
roof,
true
kind of like
structure.
a bit of a shed roof, just like a slope, maybe towards the back and drain from there.
Are there relief scuppers in the parapet?
Yes. Yeah,
Where
to
the-
the,
where
to
are
the
they?
north and the south.
Yeah.
And they don't function?
They function. So actually, I have the north one I've got hooked up to, I had a mini storm put in, and I have that one hooked up to the mini storm.
So it goes out of the side of to the outside of the stone,
Correct.
and then down.
Yeah, it's like a, it's a hole in the stone, which they rubber roofed around,
Yep.
right? And then
Yep.
there's a metal box
Yep.
that sticks out of the stone,
Yep.
right? And then the 6-inch, drain goes down, or 6-inch,
I'm just
downspout,
wondering why
downspout.
the water's backing up under the rubber roof if you have a relief scupper in addition to the sump roof drain.
Well, you have a lot of seams in those corners, not to mention the cap. And like I mentioned, you can kind of see it on, you can kind of see it on this picture, the gap at that cap, right? It's a big gap from those stones.
Is
from
that a
those
stone
top
cap
caps.
on the top of the parapet?
Yes, that's a stone, those are, you can see those are all uniform sized caps, but those caps are all tipped in like that, and we went in and had the roofing company, Coppin's Roofing, go in and caulk all those.
Tipping back toward the house?
They're tipping inside, they're tipping to the inside.
You said you had the roof done once since you've been there in 20 years.
Correct.
Just one complete re-roof.
Yep.
And who did that same?
Coppins.
Coppins.
Mhm.
Were there, prior to having that done, you have, or it was after having that done that you got you noticed water in the bedroom, water in the...
There had been issues before we moved in, that
So
we
you noticed
probably
that-
didn't recognize, but then there were issues after, and then we had it replaced. So part of the big issues we had was with that bathroom drain that was in there. And when we redid that bathroom, we took that,
Were
the
the water
plumber
issues in the
takes that
same
out of
place
there.
before with the old roof and with the new roof? Were you having water issues in the same spots? Is that...
Yes, in the front room on the right, still having some water issues there. And part of it is what Rod said, is when you don't have the proper ventilation, and we put the peak vent on there, you can see the peak vent, that's actually new to the roof, right? But you've got nothing feeding it.
Sure.
And I actually had I'm trying to think if it was spring of last year, it was bad, and we had caught some spots from actually the sweating, and I actually carried a dehumidifier up there, and
An
plugged it
outlet
in.
without an inlet probably isn't doing a thing. is it?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that, and like you said, you've got the black on the bottom of the boards. You go up there in the wintertime, and you can certainly see that in the frost, the frost buildup on the underside as well.
How are you addressing the lintels? What are you gonna do with those?
Replace them,
So you gotta take that stone off.
yes. Rather than taking the parapet down for the new hip roof, we were gonna take each window down to the window head, replace the lintel, reflash the window, and mount the stone back in place.
I assume just on the second story.
Just on the second story, yes.
All the way around on the second story?
All the way through. First floor windows, it's painted steel, with condensation or some rust, but they are not deteriorated. It's just
Not getting as
surface
much
rust.
moisture down.
What would be the obstacle to simply removing the hip and leaving a flat roof?
I would still say that there's a lot of moisture going in the house from that dental detail, with that projection of that 5 inches in that stone is going in there. You can see the color of the stone of the parapet. It's not really distorted. But you look at the section from the dental molding down to the window, you can almost see the discoloration in all the mortar joints, and all the stone, a little bit of effervescence from the moisture being inside of there, wanting to get home.
So what's the obstacle to just removing the hip, converting it to flat? Do you feel that parapet is just so compromised?
Still with that the stone detail around that dental mold, is still going to allow the water into that stone. We've had houses similar to this where we've tried sealers on the stone, to get that water not to penetrate, but to just, rinse off the surface, and it lasts for a while, it'll work for a while, but it tends to want to wear off.
And
Its way.
yeah, and the problem is when do you see it? You don't see it until all of a sudden you start having stains on your drywall and stuff like that. So then you don't even know the extent of what you have on the inside, on the structure. That's what worries me most about the parapet wall too, is that we don't know, you can't see it from inside, right? But what we're gonna end up getting into there structurally, I think, knowing what I had in the front, I think there are going to be issues structurally there. That stone is it's what is it, a 3-inch facing is what it is, right? It's not a solid stone. So it's a veneer, I don't know what you would call it, what the proper term is, right? But it's just a 3-inch facing on the there's 2x4s, and then there's siding, and then there's and then there's the stone facing on there.
You could flash the dental,
With what?
piece of copper flashing or stainless flashing. I don't know what the flashing is on the rest of the house, but if you use a piece of metal flashing above the dental, and then the parapet caps, there probably should have been a piece of flashing put on. Are they stone? The caps of the parapet?
Yeah.
They are stone.
So those should have been removed and flashed underneath before they were reinstalled.
Right.
We never took them off. So that was the design when we bought the house with the rubber roofing over the cap. They peeled off the old and they put on the new.
Right.
Is what they did. Is there any thought to leaving some of the parapet, but not all of it? But not as a parapet. You know what I mean? It would just be more facing. So the roof wouldn't sit up right on top of the dental, it would sit up on top of maybe 2 rows of stone. I might be speaking out of line here from a construction standpoint.
Is there a way to keep it at the front and the sides and then pitch it back so that you're building up that basically internal gutter, so it's pitching down and around to the back to collect it? Because the image that I saw of the relief scupper, it's very high up on that parapet.
It sits right, trying to think if it
Just
sits
below
right
us.
above the dental.
This
No,
right
it
here.
doesn't.
No,
It's way
there's a
higher.
photo.
This
You
right
got,
Yeah, that ain't-
yeah, okay, you got it. Oh, yeah, it does sit
You
higher.
can see
Yep,
it.
so that's where and that's obviously where the roof sits, right?
I
Yeah.
would have imagined that roof was sitting lower behind that parapet, because, you really don't see a lot of that hipped roof right now. You can barely see it.
Yeah, and and I took that from the other side of the street. That's the only way you
From the
see that.
garage.
That's the only way, yeah. So that's the only way that you see that. I remember when I had that done, because I came before the commission for that roof 8 years ago, and, it was a shingle color thing at that point in time, and,
Right.
it was like, oh, yeah, you're fine, nobody can see the roof. Right?
The parapet is perhaps the key
Right.
character defining feature of the whole roof structure, especially those 3 sides, the front, the north, and the south sides. If the hipped roof disappeared altogether and you did something else that was still hidden by that parapet, the Secretary of the Interior Standards would look more favorably on
Indeed.
that than
Indeed.
removing the parapets.
Right.
At the same time, if it's a choice between, I mean, if the house is really in jeopardy from the current design, I mean, I know it's obvious it's been there a long time
It's been
already.
there over 8 years.
Yeah,
To say
but,
that it's an inherent
it-
design flaw
sure,
is, it's not ideal for the northeast Wisconsin winter
No,
conditions.
right, obviously.
However,
Neither is a flat
it did
roof.
last 70-plus
Right.
years without an issue suggesting
well,
that.
without an issue that was plain, anyway, you know, and
Right.
these, like, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
So like I said, I don't know what's gonna be, I don't know, you know, it's not like I could go up there and shake the parapet wall and it's loose, right? It's not anything like that. But I don't know, given that that top cap fell in, we had to caulk all that, I don't know how much, you know, it's not like we caught that right away. I don't know how much damage has been done, and knowing the damage that I saw in the bathroom from that, you know, from that other drain, I mean, those scuppers are not ideal either. Those are not easy to seal, right?
Oh, I know.
You know, and then if your scupper backs up, you know, I mean, I've managed to keep them clean for the most part, but if that scupper backs up, right? Now all of a sudden, you know, it's pushing up underneath that roof again, and again, you don't know it until later. On the back side of the house, if you look on the back side with the drawing, yeah. So this particular structure here currently is just flat, okay? Again, that's been rubber roofed up to the dentil, okay, and then sealed on the sides, but we have watermarks in this ceiling now. And of course, this was replaced when they did all this, but we have watermarks in this ceiling, and this, the interior trim on this particular window the paint is starting to bubble on there. So I've got to be getting, you know, moisture in there. And I don't feel good about repeating the same thing, and then waiting for more problems to happen, you know, 10 years down the road or 8 years down the road.
well, there's always the potential for problems with the new roof too, I mean.
No doubt, yeah.
I mean, you're gonna do a complete renovation of a structure, you don't know you can't foresee what the potential future would hold with the new thing. But, and also, like you're saying, once you start tearing stuff apart, you don't know what you're getting into with rot or whatever.
But I think a traditional roof, you can get in and see. I mean, you can't even get in and, I mean, I can crawl in my attic, but I can't even, you know, that leak that happened in the front, you know, it took me a while to figure out what the heck was going on there, right? Because I can't physically
There's no
even
way to
get
look
in
at it.
there because of that walkway, so to speak, around, that's all flat.
Right.
You can't get in there and see or do anything.
And without a precedent really, with it being a strange design, you don't really have a precedent for how long is it supposed to last. There's no, I mean, you know, what.
Uncommon design.
Or,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, you see this design often on commercial buildings. It's unusual on a residential.
Yeah, with the combination of the hip
I
and.
mean, we see parapet, this building has one, that one has one, that one has one. It's not an impossible,
Excuse me.
if it's detailed correctly, and, you know, you allow the moisture to get out. I'm just not sure how that parapet is constructed. Do you have a sense as to how it's constructed or not?
You would know. More than me. He was up
How-
there.
If you look at it in plan, how wide is the parapet? I mean, is it a foot thick?
I think it's less than the foot, it's
Yeah.
about very close to 11 inches,
Yep.
something like that.
So, solid masonry? Or is there?
Don't I don't believe so. My guess there would be wood framing coming up vertically with a stone on the exterior and a stone capping.
Just kind of balloon framed from the floor below up through the top of the parapet, you think?
Yes, or a small knee wall, possibly on top.
Yeah, I don't know that structurally it could have handled the stone, but I don't remember when they redid it the first time what that was, you know, but certainly the walls are of normal size, so it isn't like it was
Right.
blown out there to absorb, you know, to be able to
Right.
absorb that extra weight if you put that stone laminate on the inside as well.
It's 13.5 inches thick, and it projects about 10.5 inches above the flat roof, we're saying, in the inside, before it goes up into the hip.
Do you have a detail of it then?
Just a
Oh, hand
little
sketch.
sketch.
Take pictures when you decided to play King Kong and climb up there?
Yeah, we have pictures in our file. We don't have anything with us, but
Yeah. We do have pictures of it in our file.
I mean, ultimately, the design that we put forward with the hip roof and the soffit and fascia is, we felt was the best answer for Bill 4, ever, if you wanted to own this home forever. All the water's gonna shed to the outside, we have proper ventilation to the attic, and the stone is covered. If the stone has got moisture weeping in it, it's protected by an overhang on the roof. So we kind of like recapped and covered everything that if we do this, this is gonna secure this house for the rest of its life. We won't be running into issues.
I absolutely see that, but going back to one of the original statements Jason had, I do think it does change the distinctive nature of it. I think it does fit that. I mean, I'm very sympathetic to your plight with all the water. You know, you've got a bad design.
Yeah, I mean, prior to going through this, my wife and I had, you know, quite a decision, I mean, because this isn't cheap.
No.
My wife and I had quite a decision to
Oh,
say,
no doubt.
are we gonna commit and stay in this neighborhood?
Right.
You know, because this is a lot of money we won't get back out of the
No.
house.
Right.
This isn't a, let's put it in
Right.
and we're gonna get it back out.
Right.
That isn't gonna happen.
Well, and I think that's part of what we're charged with here, is to kind of assist in the historic integrity of the entire district is what we're charged with.
Mhm.
And that's part of, I'm presuming, why you enjoy the neighborhood, because all the houses are different, they're all unique, they're all pretty well intact.
Mhm.
This is a character-changing operation to.
I just didn't think it is to this particular property. I just didn't think it was for the neighborhood.
It's one of
Because,
the nicer houses in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
and That's the problem. You
You
guys
know.
have a great residence.
you know, because you go around and there's similar ones out there with the similar, you know, overhang design and.
But it's
and-
individually contributing,
That's the
right?
problem, there's tons of colonial revivals with the large overhanging hip roof.
Right.
There's
Mhm.
not
Right.
with the parapets.
The uniqueness of what you have is what makes it especially
Okay.
challenging.
Yeah.
How do the existing roof rafters, what do they bear on?
I'm not sure, they might just be, my guess is the roof structure is framed very similar to the floor structure between first and second floor. So wall structure, floor
Just a
joist and
rim joist.
cap, wall structure and a floor system to cap again, then somehow they tied in those rafters coming down on, probably on the side of those floor joists for that flat roof.
What were you gonna bear the new trusses on?
Over the wall.
Outside wall, that's the, part of the reason for it coming up a little bit. But ultimately, what we wanted to do is for the demo mold detail to still stay there, you know, but, and having the soffit start at that line. But yes, the new rafters bearing on the wood framing.
So the first floor in this as well, it also offers some support for the main walls that go up, because the first floor in the house is concrete. So this is built like a bomb shelter. So
The
there's no
outside.
there's no wood structure in the basement whatsoever.
Well, pitch to me is like preserving the house for posterity as a long-term, thing, destroying some of the character but preserving the house itself. That's a pitch that you guys are kind of making here, like, wanting.
Right.
Now, with the cost of this renovation spread out over just doing here and there roofing repairs that need to be done as needed, rather than the big thing, I mean, just looking at that, how long does that stretch the life? I'm just
Yeah.
talking out loud here, but.
Yeah, and the problem
um,
is, and the problem that we have is you don't know when you have a problem.
Sure, right.
Right? And I
But you
realize
still-
that's
if
partially
you're-
on, I realize that
If
any
those-
structure, it's kind of like that a little bit, right? But.
If those nickels and dimes come along every 10 years, and they're not nickels and dimes still, they're expensive, but not this kind of expensive, right? So, but then you're still preserving the character, which is, I guess, our main objective in a sense.
Well-
And it'd be nice to find a way that we could preserve the character and still have you have a dry and preserved, well-preserved home. I mean, that's the goal, right?
What are the motor joints like on this though?
Has
it been retuck
We've had them
pointed?
redone.
They've been retuck pointed, the parapet?
Yep. Yep, we had that done,
The whole house or just the parapet?
the whole house. So we had that done, four, I don't know, years run together. 4 years ago or so, where we had, the mortar joints were deteriorating in areas, so we had a couple of guys come in and hit all the weak spots, but that was also a $9,000 project.
Oh, yeah,
So-
all they want.
Mhm.
I mean, in every one of these photographs, you hardly see the roof. That's what's most bothersome to me, is that you're gonna go from not seeing it to only seeing it. Is there a way to do a single pitch to the back and collect it there without having to lose the integrity of that parapet? I'm not sure that we'd be doing our job if we,
That's what I was suggesting, sort of a shed type roof with a pitch to the back and good drainage.
So removal of the parapet on the back of the home.
right,
If you remove the back wall parapet, you could salvage that stone to do the north elevation of the addition. And then the west, which would be the back side of the house, and the south side of the addition, I think it wouldn't be inappropriate there to do hit-clad that addition in the wood siding, because it's not to the street.
The Secretary of the Interior standards point out that additions should be differentiable from
Right.
the original.
right.
In that sense, using some of the stone to patch up what you're tearing apart is fine, but the lion's share of the addition itself should probably be clad in.
Yeah, it
Something
shouldn't look like it was original.
Well,
It's not
I'm
original.
not sure about the window that's on the north elevation of the addition that matches the other ones. I don't know if that's where we'd want that.
Elevation of the addition.
That window on the right.
I agree, I don't know that you'd want it, I mean, as proposed, it would appear that the house had been built with the addition and with a large hipped roof. I don't think that that would be conforming to the Secretary of the Interior standards.
Right.
some sympathetic sort of shaped window and a different siding would, but it's above my pay grade to say what's better than what's not. I'm afraid that using the stone from the parapet for the purposes of creating a seamless addition is clearly not what the Secretary of the Interior standards would call for.
It's kind of counterintuitive to me, you know, you kind of, it makes it more seamless, sort of, but at the same time, you want it to be seamed in order to know
Well,
what's old and what's new. But
And
anyway.
these things have changed over time.
Right.
Sure.
There was a time when seamless was
Was more, yeah.
where it was at.
Sure.
Now it's about hyphens and similar but different.
It's only been 20 years.
Yeah,
It might be more 50 years, but yes, 50 years from now, I don't know what it'll be.
right.
What are you saying on that proposed addition?
Yes.
Yeah, so you do siding.
Or some other material, I mean,
I don't know. I guess I'm 50 years ago, maybe, personally.
Well, personally, I am too, but I gotta report to you what I'm trained to
Yeah,
report
sure,
to you, so-
right, yeah, I like it better with the stone. And if you were, now, we're talking about shed roof, pitching that back, there's a hip roof on the addition, I mean, that was proposed, right? So what would that, I mean, that, something
the idea-
obviously would have to be done differently if the construction were to change.
Well, the idea behind that was to eventually extend over the garage and put a 3-stall garage back there. The garage it's nice having a attached garage on an older house.
Yeah.
You know, certainly unique, right?
Yeah.
Somewhat unique, but it's you fit 2 cars in it and,
Barely.
yeah.
Yeah.
You walk out the back door to walk around the cars.
To that
Yeah.
point, though, that's
It's twice as many as I can fit in mine.
attached.
Yeah.
It
I'm
wasn't
not too
part of the
sympathetic.
original COA application, but there's mention of tearing it all down and replacing it with a 3-car garage, which I would have an opinion on that as well.
Right. Yeah, that is the eventual plan.
Right.
Well, as an attached original garage, that does have historic
Mhm.
value to it, so the Secretary of the Interior Standards would recommend against
Yeah.
removing that garage and replacing it.
if you
Would
wanted
be
to do
okay
an
with adding
addition,
a stall that's differentiable in
Right.
some way, but
Yep.
not the wholesale replacement of what's current.
Well, and then you have the flat roof. That one is actually held up okay. That one has a drain on top of it as well. But,
Is that single pitched one way?
yeah, it kind of comes back into, the drain is just to the left of the window. It's in this back left corner of the garage. So is where that drain is, that roof drain.
It's a built in the roof type drain?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, fortunately, we haven't,
The only area
we had
that's
that, we had
not
that,
leaking.
we had that replaced, because it was leaking. So, that was replaced. But again, I'm not real comfortable with that either. The garage wasn't finished at the time either, and the garage is finished now, right? Yeah, I mean, this, to my wife and I, this was a design we thought, these were things that we thought, we could certainly live with for another, that we could live with for another 20 years. But if that's not the case, I don't know that we want to live there, so.
That's how I feel.
Yeah, so.
Any addition, I wouldn't want to be anything other than stone.
Well, and it could be stone, but I think the fact that you're reusing that same stone, even if it was a different stone or a different cut or a different, the fact that it differentiates it is really what the guidelines are trying to
Or
push
means
for.
of trimming off with a
Right, or there's a vertical seam or
vertical seam
something,
of some sort.
to say, this is where the corner of the house came to, and then maybe you have a recessed you know, the stone that's recessed maybe an inch or two back, and then it comes back out again. But so you can clearly see, when you're looking at it in the future, that, okay, that's what it did, and that's what they did to address what the addition is, as opposed to painting the
As
whole
opposed
wall
to
the
using
same color.
siding on it.
Right. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, but to
Yeah.
me, that's the whole point, is to make it look like it exists, so like it always existed, like it's original.
Mhm. Right,
I mean, I know what you're saying, but
Right.
I don't like the look of an addition. It
Yeah,
looks,
so we're saying as we stack the
done.
house, we can't change the look element going to a hip roof over the parapet. But if we add on the back, we want to change the element of the house.
if you change it, right,
That's very tough to stomach and understand.
yeah,
yeah,
right.
and I
Um,
wouldn't like the look of it.
I feel like a seamless addition helps to preserve the character of the neighborhood, rather, maybe not the property itself, but more the neighbor, you know, the neighborhood looks more, stays more historic looking. But I guess that doesn't really add up, because the neighborhood is made up of the individual things, so, yeah, no. It does seem counterintuitive to me too, just as a layman. I'm just a layman.
Going back to your comment about the roof and addition, with a roof, you're changing an original feature. If you're doing an addition, you're not changing something that was originally there. And again, too, as Jason mentioned, we have to go by the federal guidelines.
Well, let me speak to that point. You don't have to, and that is weird for me to say. Your ordinance says that you shall approve it unless the designated structure, historic site, blah, 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 will be detrimentally changed. I'm advising you, yes, it would be detrimentally changed. This is more of your ordinance, and it says that in arriving at your determination, you shall, what was it, consider the following factors, including letter I, the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. In considering it, you know, the legal part of me says, well, you've considered it, you can throw it out the window and burn it, it doesn't matter. You've acknowledged they exist, you've said, yes, no, it does or doesn't improve it, and we're dealing with it however we see fit. You consider it, you're not bound to it. Personally, I'd rather you were bound to it, but that's,
Yeah, I mean, so if we do this, do we get a black mark on our building that says, you know, they did not comply with?
Are you seeking historic tax credits?
I put in that application, but something tells me it ain't
It
happening.
ain't happening. I can tell you that for nothing.
the state will literally put a black mark in their file.
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's not a good
right.
But from our side, the COA is required before doing any permitting. So if you don't get the COA, you do the work anyway, you'd be doing it without a permit, which is a finable offense, same as doing work without a COA is also a finable offense. So we need to come to court some sort of a resolution so that we can get your building permit to do the work, basically.
What is the timeline for this, or what was the timeline for this?
July, we're gonna start in July.
I mean, certainly you put in a significant investment into the property. I mean, I can't sit here and question that at all. I mean,
It's a commitment.
it's a commitment to
Yeah.
a neighborhood that needs that type of, right,
Mm-hmm.
I live the next block over, or I wish I could put that into my place too, right? So, I mean, I can't fault you for that, but by the same token, we need to ensure that we're not approving something that is gonna be detrimental to the overall neighborhood and to your building, to your home.
So what would you approve? Some type of different, like we talked about? Would you
Something that
approve-
preserves the parapet.
Can we get rid of that roof up top and see what we can do about just having a flat roof up top?
Yeah, like a shed roof, little slope to the west of the back of the house.
I mean, even if it
decent
came off
drainage
the
to there.
back of the cap of the parapet, right? And so you could literally run that roofing membrane under the cap and through and down the back pitch of that. I mean, it rains, it's going to the west, it's going towards the river. It's got nothing to stop it from doing that.
It's going into Lake Lalazern in the back.
I was just gonna say, it's going into our basement.
Yeah.
Waterfront property.
Yeah, waterfront is fine, not water in.
Without sitting down and figuring out the specifics, to me, if I'm looking at that, saying, if we did that to that roof in lieu of what you're proposing, it would keep the historic integrity of that building in a better place in my mind.
I concur with that, I see exactly that. And I'm sympathetic to all the problems you've got, and you want to take care of this one fell swoop, and who knows what's under that parapet, get rid of it. I see where you're coming from.
Totally.
But that parapet, that's just, to me, that does make it distinct. And I'd like to see more of an examination of preserving that with what we're talking about, shed roof going right off the back.
So preserving it, parapet, 3-side shed roof off the back, can we still consider the possibility of putting the stone on the addition versus changing materials? If you've seen the home, there's actually kind of an accent that we carry vertically with that stone addition. So from that elevation, that looks like it's a line of that house, or where it's supposed to be, which is the outside of the kitchen. There's a slight offset before it starts the garage. That's what we carry.
Right, I'd see that on the aerials, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but what has occurred to me, the reason why the standard says that it needs to be distinct is probably to dissuade it, to dissuade changing what the structure looks like. Because I agree with everyone saying it should be seamless,
Sure,
but by making it seam, no one wants to see a seam.
right.
No one would. Perhaps the reason why the standard's that way is to dissuade these type of additions. Whether it's small like this or much larger, which does change the structure substantially.
And to expand on that, I think that they're really trying to get people to do very subtle changes too. It's not like, there are some additions where you're like, oh, that's clearly an addition. But there are some where he was saying that you just do the stonework a little bit differently for a few inches. So that way it shows that there's just a subtle change in what was there versus what you're proposing to add on to
Right.
it. So the idea is like you want it to look nice, you want it to look cohesive, but you want to make sure that there's just at least a subtle difference
It's
between
got that-
what's original and what's being added
There's
on.
coin-like thickness
Yeah.
back there, which, I don't know if you
Right.
use that as a delineation or, and,
Yeah.
you know, too, it may be the consensus of the committee that a seamless addition on the rear using
you wanna know
recycled material is okay, even
Where the
though
line is.
Secretary of the Interior
Take a
standard
picture
says.
before and a picture after,
Let's
and
look
you know,
at
if you want
Right.
to put
So-
it back the way it was, you can.
And at the corners of your building, it steps out.
Yes.
Again, that's all I'm suggesting is maybe on the back corner, you have something similar to that kind of defines that corner, and then you go from there with the next piece of stone, as opposed to trying to blend the joints of the stone into one, which is how it's shown here. Again, it can be stone, but it's subtly different. It's like if you went back 50 years from now and you said, okay, where did they blend this together?
You could look at a photo.
You could look at a photo and say, oh, this is that line, this is that distinction between it. And that's what the Department of the Interior Standards is trying to get at. So it's not that it can't be stone, but it shouldn't look like it was always the stone.
So you'd have to have a delineation line, then you could go with the original stone?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a perfect example, but I'm looking at the Green Bay Press Gazette building where they've added
Oh, yeah.
a third story, I believe.
Yep.
And you see it's in matching brick, but you can see where each addition
Yeah.
came along at some point.
Sure.
All right, okay. But, as we look to that next step, though, and I think that's important to talk about now, because that's one of the other things that is going to keep us there for, for another 20 years, is that garage.
So the Secretary of Standards would recommend an additional one-car stall that kind of telescopes out of the
West.
Yeah, you have
thank you, the west side.
Yep.
kind of have a storage.
So you'd have a two-car garage where you have a two-car garage,
Right, it would be an addition here and keeping the integrity of this.
Yeah. And
then you'd have a
third stall.
one-car stall next to it
Right.
in place of that.
Oh, yeah, you got a
Shed or
good aerial
something.
view there.
And
Yeah,
then
it
you could
just
clear out a
wouldn't-
portion
I
of the
wouldn't
wall
do it.
between the
Yeah,
two or
it just
something.
doesn't look good.
Why wouldn't you do that?
It doesn't look good.
Yeah,
It looks like it was added.
right.
Because it's only functional. It isn't, it
Looks
doesn't.
cut apart,
Yeah,
everything's
it
chopped
doesn't-
up.
It doesn't look nice.
Well, it doesn't help the issue of the garage is a two-stall garage, but
Right,
you can't.
We can't get two.
You can't get two
Yeah.
cars in there and not ding your
Good-sized
doors and
cars.
rip off your side view mirrors, it's pretty small.
Oh,
I don't
you're
know
saying
what
the existing
dimensions
garage is not wide enough to fit two cars in?
Correct. I mean, we can,
can-
but you
we
gotta
can
have two
fit-
small cars in there.
Okay.
What about doing that garage addition and making like a stall and a half wide? I mean, even 2 stalls, you've got enough yard there, I think you'd be okay in your setbacks. And then converting that existing garage to basically a 1-car garage instead of a small 2-stall?
so you're saying, the one we have existing,
Mhm.
making that a 1.5?
Making that a really generous 1 stall and then adding on like.
But it wouldn't connect,
Yeah, they would connect. Yeah.
like inside they would
Yeah.
connect?
Yeah,
From the
Sure.
exterior.
Okay.
yeah, you could make them connect.
Could they be all the same,
No,
structures?
this would have to stay
Yeah,
stone.
yeah,
Mhm.
This would have to stay stone, the next one would have to be siding.
again, that's
Or
why I
or
don't
it
wanna
could
do
be
it that way.
stone, but not,
Not the
It could
same.
be
Right.
the same
Yeah.
thing as the other thing, it's just
Yeah.
gotta be.
Show the
dis-
delineation.
Yeah,
All right,
I think properly to do anything with your roof, you'd have to, we can talk about this outside the room, but we'd have to rip all the way down to the parapet and see what's actually underneath all of that, to make sure that your walls are structurally okay.
yeah, because that is one of the bigger concerns, is I don't think that parapet wall is, I mean, I don't feel good about that. I don't
We
feel
need to
good
take it
about
down anyways to repair the lintels and
Yeah.
windows, so that's coming down that
Well, you wouldn't have to. You could go from the lintels up.
far. Like parapet's coming all the way down
No,
to the
you
lintels.
go from the lintel, take out that stone above the lintel, put the new lintel back in, and then patch the stone.
To flash, to counter flash that dental detail,
Mm-hmm.
you need to terminate that somewhere, so that will actually have to
Understood.
go into the wall
Understood.
structure, and so then you're taking that stone off.
But you wouldn't have to take the whole parapet down. You can piece it back in.
Well, you would have to take that off. It can be put back up the way it is, you know, it can look the same, you can use the same stone, but you would need to take that down to that layer. We just need, just the width of the window to get that far. So I guess I'm saying, we have to take the parapet all the way down to the top of the dental detail, and then we would stage each section by the window, we'd have to take down to the window to replace the
I
window.
disagree. I don't think you have to take the parapet down to replace those lintels. A good stonemason can cut that stone out above the lintels, replace the steel, and then piece that stone back in.
Yes, he can, but the flash that dental deals.
Well, yeah,
So that we
above
don't-
the dental, but it was the same principle as the lintels. That's why I asked how you're replacing the lintels earlier.
Right.
I think you could take a couple of courses out above the dental to put that flashing in.
And let the rest float.
You gotta support it temporarily while you're flashing. It's not easy. But nothing is on a
Cheap.
historic house.
so it seems.
Right, okay. All right, thank you for your time and your input.
Yeah, thank you for coming. If you guys want to discuss amongst yourselves and then get back to us,
Yep.
let us know what you'd like to move forward with. I mean, you can still submit the application as you would like, but I think this was beneficial to see how we might react to it, so
Mhm.
keep you posted.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, Stephanie, thanks for your time.
Thanks, yeah.
All the time, right?
Okay, we're on to item 2, We've got essentially 20 minutes to wrap up the rest of the items on the agenda.
Okay.
So staff
do it.
level certificate of appropriateness applications.
I forget what we did, sorry.
We actually had 4, so these were the ones that were proposed in your packet. And then Whitney School had some additional staff level things that were done at the same time that we did the window application at Landmarks Commission. So these were all done in the past month.
So it was chimney tuck pointing, and the one in the middle, what looks like a wooden fence currently there is photoshopped in. They want to put that wooden fence there. That's fine. 716 Dousman, new roof, no change, asphalt shingles. Whitney School, I forget what it was.
I think it was tuck pointing and some sidewalk work.
That's right.
Yeah, really minor stuff.
And in the case of Whitney School, the Department of the Interior has oversight on all that anyway because it's a tax credit project.
So if they're going after federal tax credits or state tax credits, then we don't need to review it?
That's not true. This
I want
is,
to amend our code to say that, but right now we still do.
this is me saying that people who spend a lot more time looking at this stuff are looking at that particular property. It would be a little awkward for me to argue with the Department of the Interior about the preservation treatments for building.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how that sets it up for precedent, like, in this scenario, if he was going after tax credits.
I'm confident.
We would defer then to the state of Wisconsin for their input.
I'm confident that the state of Wisconsin would deny their application.
I don't disagree. I'm just,
We use it for review material, so they submit that back to us for our staff review. So we have a much easier job when it's already been reviewed by somebody else, basically.
sure.
Frankly, if the state thought it was okay, I'm on thin ice to disagree with the state. I mean, I disagree with them on a lot of things, mostly personal, but
Right.
they think very highly of themselves, so it would be a challenge. But yes, this committee does still retain all oversight of everything, even if it's a tax credit project.
That's what I thought, I just wanted to check.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we could receive and place that on file, please.
I'll make a motion to place staff level certificate of appropriateness applications on file.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item would be review city raise and repair orders and demolitions.
For these, all of them except for the North Webster were part of the flood that happened with East River last month. So those are, they have raised repair orders on them, only to keep people out of the home until they are safe to occupy again. I believe most of them will be rehabbed and brought back to the living. I don't know the background on the North Webster project. I don't know if Jason, if you have
I
anything
do.
to add.
With the flood properties, I think we're gonna see more raised repair
Yeah,
orders
there are
in
a
a
few more
month or two ahead, all in that general, which park is it there by the East River? I forget.
East River.
East River Park?
Is it really?
I'm sorry. I thought you were talking neighborhood association.
No,
That'd be-
where Mason crosses the East River, that
Yeah.
whole
Oh,
general
yeah.
area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Name
didn't
of it.
even know.
That park.
Different neighborhood association.
So a lot of flooding there. And as I walked around taking pictures of these houses, I saw others with condemned placards in the windows, so that's that. 1113 North Webster, center top, according to the letter, I think it was basically a sewer backed up into the basement. It's a landlord rental property. I don't know how often the tenants were in the basement, but it's a raise repair order based on a basement swimming pool. North Webster is interesting though, because that house is on the west side, and that's in the area where everything on the east side of North Webster has been bulldozed here in the last several months.
Yeah.
So, as a neighborhood goes, I think they just punched out a large corridor. This is punching out something on the other side of that. Unfortunate maybe, hopefully it'll be fixed. I don't have any reason to think it will be or won't be, but, you know, that's what that's about.
But none of these are listed as historic properties.
Correct.
It's a nice character on the bottom too.
Mm-hmm.
They're cute, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think we're looking for a motion then.
So moved. Receive and place on file.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Staff update.
I emailed all of you, but we are now a certified local government.
Yay.
So 2 years of hard work, at least 3, 4, I don't know, forever. So with that, when the new cycle of funding becomes available, we'll have to do some brainstorming about what we'd like to apply for. So the biggest money getter is always to redo or do a new survey. I don't know how interested we are doing that straight off the bat. I know we have some other things we'd probably like to accomplish prior to getting more properties to take care of. But I would like to do some more educational outreach, pamphlet, that sort of thing, to make sure that we have a really strong presence in the community before we start initiating some more survey work. But I think we should have a staff discussion about that.
My thought on that is that that's not gonna happen overnight. That survey's gonna take a long.
Oh, yeah, and a lot of money, and not enough that they cover with that grant
It'll be a
proposal. so
multi-phase project over several years.
Right.
Definitely.
So, in my mind, the sooner we get going on that, the better, so that we can start to build that database of information. I think the key thing is, where do you want to start, and where's the biggest risk?
Yes.
Where are our biggest challenges?
I also think we need to think about if we want to resurvey places that have already been surveyed, because they're due for them. They're about 30 years old, but some of them may have lost quite a bit of integrity. So-
Well, I think it would be good this time through to have some graphics associated with the text. Everything before was purely text, as far as I've seen. So, photographs, site plans, identification of public buildings should be part of the RFP process now.
Yeah, we'll need help generating an RFP. And I don't know exactly what you call if it's beat and hunt, and whoever talks about being better than beat and hunt.
Yeah.
But the whole city should be done, and the state now recommends at least once every 30 years. And I think we're at the 30-year plus point right now.
We're at 30 years.
So for writing the RFP though, there has to be examples of
Precedent,
that
the state
RFP
has.
being issued
Yes,
in other municipalities. so-
and as a CLG, we are entitled to technical assistance from the State Historic Preservation Office. I am sure they have on file in a cabinet copies of RFPs,
Yeah.
and probably some ideas about how it could have been better or worse.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. Go from
I
there.
mean, didn't DePere just do theirs?
I think so.
When I worked in Beloit, I got a grant through CLG for a new survey, so I've done them before. They're not fun, but they're easy.
It's bigger than me going around in my car taking pictures. So
Right.
It's, 50 of me going around in their cars taking pictures.
Right, absolutely. My 2 cents is that that's something we should get, because it's gonna take a while.
I'll get a better idea of when the funding window opens, then we can have a discussion here about that. That's it for my update. Is there something?
Yeah, I'll just add that I think the CLG sub-grants are usually the upper end of 25,000 a year or something. Intensive survey of the city of Green Bay will be more than that,
Oh, a lot more.
a lot more, which is why I said it'll be a multi-year, multi-phase thing. I don't know, spreading it over 3 years would cover the costs or not, but, we'll figure it out as part of the RFP process.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was $150,000 investment to $200,000.
I would not
Sounds
think.
all right.
But the neat thing of that is we'd have an updated survey which would identify eligible properties and districts. And then there's the financial aspect to coming in saying, well, if we nominate this district, well, the tax credits become available to all these property owners.
Right.
So there's money on the line.
Right.
That's a good thing to chase
Well,
after.
when it was done last time, the city GIS system didn't exist, and I think there are ways that we could potentially tie some of those things together too, so.
It'll keep Stephanie busy for a long time.
Yes, that's for sure.
Might keep me busy too.
I believe so.
Once I get Mary Poppins down here or something.
Please don't leave us.
Okay.
Next item on the agenda is the date of the next meeting, Monday, June 10th. Everybody think they're going to attend? Okay, any other further business of the commission?
David, what am I doing on June 10th?
Morning, you're mowing my lawn.
Okay.
Afternoon is windows.
I used to do windows.
That's tomorrow.
Unless there's any other new business, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Now we can log out.